Now have a look at the users table and we'll come down to structure. Of course, a user has a name, an email address, a password, some timestamps, some indexes. But where exactly in our code are these columns being defined and described? Well, come to your database migrations directory, and here are the migrations that ship with a new install of Laravel. Okay, so have a look at this. You'll see it divided into two methods, up and down. Up is to run the migration. Down is to reverse the migration. So have a look here. To run the migration, we create a new table called users, and then notice this is effectively the blueprint for a table. A user has an ID, a name, an email address, a timestamp for when their email was verified, a password, some tokens, and then some created at and updated at timestamps. And again, notice that maps exactly to what you see here. And what's cool about this is it's really easy to understand. If you need to create a string column, then you call the string method and you give it a name. So what if instead of name, maybe we want this to be username? Well, of course, if I switch back to Table Plus, it doesn't magically update. We still have to run a command to reflect that change. So let's see. If I run PHP Artisan and I scroll up, you're going to see a few commands related to running your migrations. Have a look at this one right here, migrate rollback. Roll back the last migration. Okay, well, it sure sounds like that's going to map to what you see here. Or in other words, the down method describes how a migration is rolled back. And in this case, it drops the users table if it finds one. Okay, let's give it a shot. PHP Artisan, migrate rollback. But notice, it doesn't just roll back the users table. It rolls back all migrations that were run in the previous iteration. So now if I go back to Table Plus and we refresh this, those tables are now gone, just leaving the migrations table, which Laravel uses to organize each batch. Okay, so now let's run migrate again. And this time, if we refresh, notice our users table is back, but this time we have updated that column name. And actually, real quick, while we're here, in the migrations table, notice it tracks which of your migrations has been executed along with which batch. Now, you'll never need to modify this, but just as an example, if we made the users table part of this second batch, that means when I roll back, it will only roll back this single migration. Let's try PHP Artisan migrate rollback. So now notice the difference between rolling back here and up here. So if we come back and refresh, all of the migrations from batch 1 remain. And again, you don't even really need to think about that very much, but just so you have a basic idea. So I will run migrate again. And let's see what else we have here. If I scroll back up, you know how to roll back the previous batch. The last one I want you to focus on is here, migrate fresh. Let's just see what it does. PHP Artisan migrate fresh. And notice it starts over from scratch. It drops all of your tables and it reruns them all from the beginning. And this can especially be useful during development when you're still building up your tables. Just be careful though, would you ever run this command in a production environment? Think about it. Would that make sense? The answer, of course, is no. If you dropped all your tables in production, you'd lose all of your data. And then after it runs, you'd get your tables back, but they would all be empty. So you would never, ever, ever run this command in production. And in fact, I bet, let's just see. I bet if we change the environment to production, it's going to give me an alert. At least I think. Let's run it. Aha, notice, hey, your application is in production. Do you really want to run this command? No. So it gives you one last chance in case you made a mistake, which is a good idea. Okay, but anyways, let's bring the environment back to local. So what's nice is how you have full control over the makeup of your tables. Maybe you have no plans for email verification. Okay, get rid of that. Maybe you also have a basic form of authorization, maybe a column called isAdmin. And if that column is truthy, then you're an administrator for the app. Otherwise, you're not. If you want that to go on your users table, you could say table, and we want a Boolean in this case, isAdmin, And what should the default be? Well, it should probably be false. Okay, so now you know you could either do this, you could do a combo of migrate rollback and then migrate again, or you could say PHP Artisan migrate fresh. And again, in the early stages, this can be really useful. But again, to reiterate, every time you do this, if you have any data in those tables, it's going to, of course, remove all of it. And in the future, we'll talk a little more about how to deal with this and also how to reseed your database tables. So we'll come back, give this a refresh, and now here is our updated user schema. A username, an email address, no email verified at column, and then we do have a Boolean here. Now let's add a record here, and we'll say Jeffrey Way, Jeffrey@Laracast.com. Now, of course, your passwords always need to be encrypted. If this is your user's password, you never want to store that in plain text. It's a big no-no. And I'll show you how to deal with encryption in a little bit. For now, we'll use gibberish. Okay, next for the rest of these, we can stick with their defaults. And I'll hit Command S to commit that. Now, I'll show you a little tip. You can right-click on a record and then say copy row as insert statement. And now that's in your clipboard. So if I were to hit delete and then Command S to commit that delete, and this is something you'll always do in Table Plus, for any change you make, you then have to commit it after the change. So now it's gone, but if I come to the SQL tab, I can paste that in to rerun the command. And now, Command R to refresh, and it's back. So all of this to show you, and just to prove to you, if we were to run migrate fresh again, it drops your tables, it rebuilds them, and now you've lost all your data. So that's something to keep in mind. Once again though, I will run this to repopulate the table. So now in the next episode, I'll show you how to map a single record from a database table to an eloquent model.